Well, U.S. President Donald Trump is threatening to impose a 100% tariff on all movies made outside of the United States. In an early morning post, Trump lashed out at other countries for stealing, quote, candy from a baby. Then he slams the governor of California. Trump promises to solve this long-time, never-ending problem by imposing a 100% tariff on any and all movies that are made outside of the States. With me now to discuss is Martin Katz, the founder and president of Prospero Pictures. Martin, thank you so much for being with us. Let's start with your reaction to this announcement from the president. He's hinted at this before.
Thanks, Marcy. Yeah, we heard this in May was it May of last year? It seems like just yesterday, but there's been such, I guess it was May of this year, there's been such chaos around this issue and around every issue really that the President of the United States touches. It's hard not to be persuaded that the chaos is the point and not the effectiveness of the threat. But, you know, we have to think about the fact that film and television production in Canada has been an incredible success story. I'm in Winnipeg right now. I grew up here. And although I live in Toronto, the idea that you would have a life in film and television and a career in film and television production, producing feature films and television series in Winnipeg was a crazy fantasy when I grew up here. And, you know, John Hamm is here this week. Mireille Enos is here. The Little House on the Prairie reboot is being shot here. There's an enormous amount of production all over the country, not just in Toronto and Montreal. In fact, of the $8 billion or so of production that goes on in Canada, about $4.8 billion of it is U.S. sourced production. So if U.S. production disappears, that's going to leave a big hole in the industry right across the country and throughout the world.
Okay, let's talk a little bit more about that. How much production actually happens in the U.S. right now? Why has it moved outside of the States?
So the production has moved outside of the States for a number of reasons. You know, I was one of the producers of Ice Road Truckers. Well, guess what? The ice roads are in Canada. You know, they're not in the States, so we can't shoot that show in the United States. There's a lot of other reasons for shooting shows, you know, throughout the world. You know, White Lotus, that a lot of people enjoy, is an entirely American show, conceived in America, produced in America, owned by America, you know, and happens to be shot in spectacular locations around the world. It defies logic entirely that that kind of a show would attract some kind of tariff. And of course, it's impossible to imagine what the tariff applies to. You know, that's a show that's owned by an American network, a broadcaster, that is shot with Americans using some production services from people on location. But what is it that's crossing a border? Nothing's crossing a border. It's a service. You know, it's filmed digitally. It's transferred digitally back to the U.S. There's no place to apply a tariff unless they're going to apply a tariff to subscribers. But that doesn't seem to make much sense. So logistically, it's impossible to imagine how this thing is going to apply. And economically, you know, the United States production industry, which you described in that tweet as being a baby that we're stealing candy from somehow, is the largest and most powerful film and television industry on the planet Earth. And it got that way by exporting its product. 80% of its revenues come from outside the United States. So if there were countervailing duties, you can imagine that the studios would not be happy that other countries are charging, you know, a countervailing duty on U.S. exports. That's their greatest service export, is film and television.
So as you point out, the Truth Social post is lacking details, short on specifics. But do you think it will have an immediate impact on the industry? Will there be a chill, or will it be business as usual? Can you kind of set the scene for us?
I think it's hard to avoid the chill. Here we are right now, diverting important resources from the business of, you know, production or working or, you know, talking about the Jays, to scratching our heads trying to figure out what this could possibly mean, how could it possibly be implemented. So yes, there's a cost right away from this threat, as there has been from all of Trump's threats. The last time he made this threat, it took about 48 or 72 hours before people realized it was nonsensical and counter to the interests of the industry in the U.S. And perhaps, you know, the intention here is is to spend another, 48 or 72 hours, not talking about Epstein and talking about how these tariffs are going to affect America. It's impossible to know what American politics is, motivated by, but it's clearly not motivated by anything that makes any sense either for the American industry or for the global industry.
Martin, really appreciate your time and your analysis. Martin Katz is the founder and president of Prospero Pictures. We'll talk to you again.
Thanks, Marcy.
You're welcome.